a Build Hatch developed production.
Hello, I'm Aaron Kyle and welcome to another episode of Build Hatch. On this week's episode, I got to sit down with tower crane extraordinaire Dylan Hunt. This was an interesting one. If you ever wanted to hear about the day in the life of that guy on site who sits high in the sky and controls those enormous tower cranes, this is it. Dylan is the man in the hot seat and he's a real character. So you'll enjoy this one, so let's get into it. Dylan Hunt, welcome to Build Hatch.
Thanks, mate.
You've got a really cool, interesting job. So you're a tower crane operator. Is that the terminology for it?
Yeah, that's the terminology, mate, yep.
All right. So what we like to do is go back to our guest's background and how they got into their chosen field and where you grew up. So if we take it back to there, whereabouts did you grow up?
I started in Rooty Hill, down Western Sydney. I was about 11 or so, and then moved up this way as a young sort of teenager. Grew up in Neilson Bay, Port Stephens, and sort of started in the crane or the construction industry at about 17.
So you went to high school in Neilson Bay?
I did, yeah.
And did you know that you wanted to enter the construction industry?
Well, sort of had that in mind. My father's a tower crane driver as well, so
Really?
yeah, sort of in the family.
Having your father as a tower crane operator, you, I guess, had some aspects of it already in your DNA. Were you being sort of guided by your dad to become one as well?
Yeah, not so much. Just sort of wanted to follow in the footsteps. It's one of those games, you know. It's just sort of it takes over your life almost. It's a 6-day-a-week industry, sort of big hours. So yeah, him and Mum broke up pretty early. So sort of, I don't know. It was almost following that footsteps to an extent.
So for you to choose that industry, do you start off in smaller cranes and work your way up naturally? Is that how it works?
More often than not, most people sort of start off in mobiles, smaller cranes. Yeah, well, I sort of I went the sort of rigging aspect, I guess. I started as a labourer, cleaning tower crane bolts in a yard, just prepping cranes, I guess, getting them ready to go out to site, because there's actually, you know, a lot of work that's got to go in. Riggers have got to do a lot of on-ground preparation work before these cranes are safe, you know, deemed safe to go up. So I sort of started doing that sort of stuff in crane yards, and then eventually went out to site and sort of you want to be at least dogging, which is directing the crane on the ground, doing materials handling. You want to be doing that at least 2 years before you even think about setting foot in a crane. So
I guess to explain to the listeners who are listening to this and thinking, what does a dogman do? I mean, what are the basic levels of a crane crew, if you like?
Yeah, okay. It's most people are a bit bewildered about what a dogman is. So to sort of try and describe it, we're basically in charge of materials handling on a construction site. So everyone on that construction site relies on us. All the tradies rely on us for their materials to be brought into site on time. So trucks will come in, we're bringing everyone's materials, whether it be form workers, steel fixers, stressors, electricians, all those sorts of trades, gyp rockers, brickies. They're all sort of relying on us to bring their materials into the building, especially in the high-rise game. Once you start getting a few levels up, it's almost completely relying on tower crane on a high-rise building.
So you're the operator. You're in the cab operating it.
Yep. So yeah, you'll have the operator obviously behind the sticks, looking at sort of instruments to gauge weight, wind, your radius, your load chart, sort of keeping all these things in check, make sure everything's going safe, and your dogmen are basically down there hooking up the loads and making sure everything goes efficiently. So you've sort of got to work in with all the other trades. You've got to know how to hook all the different sorts of materials that you'll have coming on site safely.
Now, a tower crane, by definition, I guess, is the configuration where you're permanently installed on site. That's and you're there from the early stages until the later stages, basically.
Yep.
And it's a pretty interesting exercise how they actually get erected on site themselves, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a bit of a feat. I'm actually a rigger myself, so yeah, been involved in quite a few. It's usually the whole site's shut down, typically to do it. So it's a pretty big exercise.
So we're on a built site in Newcastle, and we're lucky enough to have Leif, the site manager, on the show on a previous episode. So how much pre-planning goes into setting up your particular crane?
There's a lot. There's traffic management plans that got to come into place.
And this is just getting it to site, isn't it? Not to mention where you actually position it on site.
Exactly. So, obviously sort of has to go through an engineer's point of view where they're going to put it. Then it comes to passing out the contract to whoever's actually going to erect it. And, they've got to work out the right crane for the job. It's got to have the right capacity for all the maximum lifts that are going to go on throughout the job. And, there's a lot of planning leading up to the day of install, and then you've got to get it through council for traffic management plans, crane crew, the size of the mobile crane that you're going to use to install it, which is typically what you'll use unless there's already a first tower crane on site, which can sometimes be helpful. But typically you're going to use a large mobile, which is going to pretty much shut off the road.
What's the actual process involved in calculating whether you can lift that and how far you can lift it? Like, is it done on a computer inside the cab? How does it work?
We've got a display up in the cab, and that'll show us exactly what weight we're capable of. You should also have a load chart in your crane, which you can visibly inspect.
So do you just sort of pick something up off the ground just a bit to actually weigh it, or are you relying on knowing that weight beforehand?
Most of the things we lift are fairly generic, so I'm
it's the same
from my
materials.
Perspective, I'm pretty confident in picking things up. It's when you're picking something out, you're worried you might not be good for the capacity. It's just a matter of sort of a test lift, I guess, if it's safe to do so. Usually anything that's very, very heavy will sort of have a lift study done on it. Anything over 10 tonne has to have a lift study done on it before it comes to site. Typically we'll get engineering specifications of any sort of non-generic lifts.
Now, the particular crane that you're operating on this side, it's a Liebherr. What sort of capacity does that have to lift at, say, full reach?
This is a Liebherr 280 HCL. So its configuration at the moment, 60 metres of boom in single fall, which will give it it's 12 tonne max capacity, and so I've got 60 metres of boom. So at max radius, I'm sort of good for a little over 3 tonne.
There's a lot that's involved in craning, and not only lifting but the logistics that go along with it. The engineer that you mentioned before, who I guess figures out where that crane is positioned and what are the materials that it's going to be lifting throughout the duration of the job, is that sort of organised through, say, the contractor like Built, or is that like a specialised crane sort of consultant? It's
sort of a mixture of both. Typically, a lot of construction companies work differently, but my understanding the specialists will sort of, for our company, for instance, we've got plenty of experts who sort of know our crane capacities and what they're capable of, and what's going to best suit a job. So they'll go in and sort of work those out, and it comes from both sides really. Yeah.
Now I'm going to test you out here. How many steps does it take to get up to that crane every day?
Well, this is only nice and short, this one, so I haven't.
It doesn't look short.
The actual tower configure. To put in perspective, the last one I was driving here in the Verve Apartments was 92 metres in the air. So that was quite a mission. This one's not too bad in comparison. I wouldn't be able to tell you how many steps. You got me there.
So what's it like up there? Is it lonely?
Yeah, I guess so. Well, you're very busy. It's sort of mentally exhausting, I guess. Like, it's very similar to driving a car, I guess. Your concentration's a lot more heightened. You sort of.
I would liken it more towards like a plane. Like, it has that extra element of responsibility and that liability. Like, you're the boss up there, aren't you? Really? Like, you've got guys on the ground, but you're the guy carrying everything.
Yeah, you're the one actually delivering the actions and sort of, I guess, the buck stops with you. So yeah, there is a lot of responsibility, and it's can be very tedious and stressful at times. That's for sure. Trying to make the big decisions, like when to call it with wind, which is all the sort of safety factors that come into play.
How does that work? Like a certain wind speed, certain wind direction, and you sort of say, look, I don't think today's the day. It's probably not really smart to lift today. Exactly.
You sort of got to mix, I guess, experience mixed with those conditions of the day. Like it's a very complicated thing. It's not one size fits all. Like sort of, you get to about 55 kilometres an hour, and you're pretty much not doing anything after that. But it depends on the materials that you're lifting, the direction of the wind, how the wind's behaving. But you sort of got to make those tough decisions, I guess, on the day.
So what's a typical day for you arriving to site? Like what sort of activities or meetings do you attend, and sort of what transpires from there?
Typically we'll just do a pre-start between the crane crew.
So you say on site at like 6 o'clock or 7 a.m?
Yeah, here all sites are different with the DA approval. With the hours we're allowed to work, but here we start at 6:30. We have a meeting with Built. We'll just sort of outline what are the main objectives of the day they want to complete, and just go from there.
And so, like, how many lifts are you doing a day? Like, does it vary?
It does. Yeah, it varies a lot depending on what you...
Now, what's the most interesting thing that you've seen when working up there in a tower crane?
One of the most interesting things that I've seen.
I'm sure you see a lot of interesting things, particularly in the city environment.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of cool things that happen up here in Newcastle. You see some of those fighter jets come down real low.
Have you ever had, like, not a near miss, but have you been pretty close to a helicopter or a plane?
Those fighter jets come over pretty low here. It's probably about as close I've been, other than done a few airport jobs in Mascot. And no real near misses, mate. No, nothing too exciting.
So how long are you up there for, like in a typical day? Like, are you walking down for lunch or regular trips? Like, what happens if you need to go to the toilet?
Well, sometimes you got to piss in a bottle. But normally we just have smoko and lunch like everybody else. And
so do you'll come down to this lunchroom and catch up with the guys?
Yep. Yeah, the builders are usually pretty good like that. They obviously allow us a little bit more time to sort of get our act together, because we're climbing up and down the bloody crane. So
how long does it take?
Roughly
around 15 minutes or so.
15-20 minutes, mate. Yeah, somewhere. It depends on the height of the crane again.
What's the most interesting thing that you've had to lift being a crane operator?
Actually done some pretty interesting lifts recently. I was one job in Central Station on a company called Mars. They got a 1280, which is quite a big Favco, and we lifted a couple of roof trusses off the old Central Station job, which was a bit of a feat.
I bet it was.
Yeah.
I see a lot of Portaloos go up and down at the end of the day. I bet that's interesting.
Oh, actually, got a few drops in a foreman's mouth once. He wasn't real happy. The dogman said, look out, and he looked straight up, didn't he, and popped a drop straight in the mouth.
I'm sure that wasn't intended.
No, I hope it wasn't urine or anything. It was just a bit of water dropping off the bin. Yeah, he wasn't happy.
Oh, I can imagine. Being a crane operator, you guys, I guess, everyone knows that you're pretty well paid for what you do, but what people don't understand with crane operators is you are predominantly contractors, aren't you? Because you're going from site to site. You might be on a site for 6 months, 12 months, whatever it might be. You're kind of going from different jobs to different jobs, aren't you?
Yeah, mate. If you look at it from an hourly perspective, I mean, we do massive hours. So, I mean, yeah, we're sort of well paid, but yeah, I don't think it's too spectacularly over the top of what your average sort of wage would be. I wouldn't imagine sort of going off like an hourly rate, I guess. But it's pretty savage. It's like a game of musical chairs, I guess. You never know where you're going to end up until you're actually there. So you're always sort of worried about where your next job's going to be. It can be a bit of a worry.
Does it
for sure
always work out where you kind of have very minimal overlap or very minimal waiting sort of on standby for the next job to come?
I've been with the company I'm with for a very long time, Reds Global, so they've sort of looked after me in that respect. But yeah, a lot of the time it doesn't work out like that for a lot of blokes. Like right now, for example, the COVID, I think it's gone pretty bad for a lot of industries. But
it's funny, isn't it, how real estate and finance experts, that's a key measurable by the amount of tower cranes that are in a city, and that has an impact, a direct correlation with how the local economy's going.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's got a big influence, massive influence, and yeah, I think we find out pretty quick smart. Like at times like this where unfortunately a lot of people are getting laid off, and not good times.
So, what's your favourite part of your role?
Favourite part of my role, probably just getting the views that I get sometimes it's definitely a highlight. I've got the view of the Newcastle Beach and Stockton up there. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, particularly like you mentioned with the fighter jets going past and all the coal ships coming in, not to mention ocean views all day long.
Yeah, it's
and a sea breeze.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That can definitely be a positive. So yeah, it's sort of one of my favourite aspects, I guess.
So for a young guy such as yourself, Dylan, who wants to, I guess, aspire to be a tower crane operator, which these guys are the pinnacle of your sort of logistical type industry, if you want to feel like that in terms of cranes. What would you say to a young guy who's coming through and aspiring to be someone like yourself?
Yeah, some advice would definitely be to just listen. Listen to the blokes that got experience, and definitely be grateful when people are. I think that's a good thing in most things in life, but I don't think you sort of learn that being a young bloke. A lot of blokes don't, but yeah, I think you really should appreciate people that are willing to show you the right way to go about things, and I think listening's a very underrated sort of a thing. A lot of people like to fake it till they make it. I think the best option is to try and find someone who's willing to teach you and sort of
earn it, really.
Yeah, earn it and show a bit of appreciation.
If you're in construction wanting to be, say, a tower crane operator, are you kind of starting off on like smaller cranes, on smaller sites and building your way up, or is it more getting your dogman tickets and working in those sorts of specialised crane industries? Yeah,
well, it used to be sort of like a trainee sort of a thing, I guess, but now it's very strict. You've got to have your tickets before you start doing any of that sort of stuff. So yeah, first steps to get your tickets, whether that be through a personal assessor or a sort of like a TAFE or something. And then from there, it's kind of hard to get a foot in, because most people, as far as dogmen go, they're sort of looking for someone with minimum 2 years experience. So it is kind of tricky to sort of get into the industry when you don't have that 2 years experience under your belt in the first place. But yeah, I suppose just get your ear to the ground and when the work's at its peak, that's sort of the time to be able to try and step in.
Dylan, thank you for sharing your story on Build Hatch.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate. I appreciate it.
Well, that was another Build Hatch episode with tower crane operator Dylan Hunt. As usual, please check out our Instagram page where you'll be able to learn more about our guests and look at some of the features of their work that we talk about. Have a great week, and you'll hear me again on the airwaves next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Build Hatch.
You have experienced a Build Hatch developed production.